I'm really excited for today's speaker. She's actually one of our alumni. She took our facilitating workshops course, and she's here to talk about, as I mentioned, how she process for kicking off projects, including workshops for her freelance work. So Gero is a digital product designer based in Berlin. After her interaction design study, she worked for startups and digital agencies. Parallel, she started freelancing. For 2 years, she's been a freelance designer and has helped many projects to become a success. And I'm gonna leave the rest over to her and let her tell her a little bit more about herself and get into the topic today. So thanks so much. I'm gonna take myself off stage.
Thank you, Hannah. Hi, everyone. So as Hannah said, my name is Gero. I'm based in Berlin. And there's also an update about my career. I just joined a network of developers, Connecto they are called, and together we develop meaningful digital products. So that's the latest news, actually. And today I will show you my process, how I, as a freelance designer, kick off projects with my clients. And I prepared a little board in Miro for this. I will share my screen for that. So we're kind of doing an example workshop that I would do for a fictional client in this case. And afterwards, I'm also happy to give you the template for this workshop so you could use it and customize it for your workshops. Maybe one question, like how many of you are actually freelancers? That would be interesting for me. Maybe you can just react to that. Cool. So when I was new to freelancing, I was an expert in designing, but I didn't know how to kick off projects because I worked in startups and digital agencies before, and that was like a skill that I was missing. And I found a process that works for me at the moment. But as I said, for every client, I would need to customize this process. Before I dive deeper into the actual workshop process, I would just give you an overview. What is the value that workshopping brings us as designers in the work that we do with our clients? So first of all, it will help us to align everyone in the team and also to set the right goals. And also we're becoming like an expert role, and it's not about just delivering designs, but also it's more like a collaboration process. So we work together as a team together with the client and all the stakeholders, so also developers, project managers included. And also we need to define the problems that might come up in the process. And we have a shared understanding what is our goal that we want to go to. The expectations from my clients are often that they have already like a idea of what they want to see, but they have no exact briefing, or it's really technical and they were not thinking about empathizing with their clients. I mean, this is just the kickoff workshop that I would do, but it will lead to other workshops to define more about certain features, or if we need to do user research, how would we do it, and all the details. This will come up later, but this is just for the kickoff, so we have a shared understanding where we are going towards. Also, maybe in the beginning, the client might have concerns if you're able to deliver a good work. So this helps to maybe set the expectations right and define what a project is a good work, or when is something finished, something like this. And we need to agree on next steps that we want to do together. So this is an example that I will use for today, that my client is a vet and they have a homepage, and for their homepage, they want to release a new feature, which would be the pet finder feature. So what is a pet finder? This I will explain later in the lightning demo. Maybe one thing to know before you set up a workshop, you should share like a fuzzy goal, what we are going to do together in a collaboration with your client. And this goal you will send in an email invitation together with the workshop and like the agenda, just to make sure that everyone knows what this is gonna be about. And then also maybe you need additional material like pen and paper can be helpful, or just like a good set of headphones, this kind of things. So all together you will send this in the invitation. And so after everyone is in the workshop and we're together here, all the important stakeholders, you make sure that everyone has time and can attend the workshop. In this case, yeah, first we have the agenda. So today we're gonna go through the introduction of everyone who attended this workshop. Then we have a lightning demo from Dr. Erika, who is the product owner and the vet. Then we have a group work time, and then we're gonna make an impact effort matrix, followed by putting the items into a timeline, and then also clarify what could be risk and responsibilities. So first, if we zoom out, I made here like I defined the archetypes of the workshop. So we are starting with the inform and engage part. Then we are generating ideas and prioritizing them. Then we align the team and define next steps. If you have any questions in between, feel free to post them or just raise your hand and ask something. So I will start with the intro. So you are now in my workshop, and I would ask you to introduce yourself with name, pronouns, then your favorite food and the role in the project. Of course, it's not important what you like to eat in this case, but it's just like a nice icebreaker, and maybe like there are a few laughs in the beginning, which is always good to have, I think. So that's why I asked for the favorite food. And then I would give every participant 2 minutes that I will time frame, and will ask them to fill out some post-its that I prepared beforehand for them. In this case, my participants already filled them, and we have Dr. Erika. She used the pronouns she and her, and her role as a product owner, and she loves carrot cake. Then I also filled it for the developer Gal, also myself, and so on. You can imagine now everyone is introducing themselves. Then we continue with the shared goal. This is something that I pre-filled, but it's just to make sure that we are on the same page and everyone agrees that today we are here to help our clients to find their lost pets. This is our mission, and this is what we want to solve in this case. And we want to fill the gap between the moment that we are here, and in the workshop we need to define what is gonna happen to solve this shared goal. Just to kind of point this out. Then I have a little lightning demo, which Dr. Erika can do, because she's the expert about her clients, but I could also do it. It depends on the use case. So Dr. Erika is basically helping us to empathize with the client, the customer that she has.
Gero, can I interrupt for just a moment?
Yes, please.
We had a request if you could zoom in a bit.
Of course, yeah.
I think maybe to see
Might be
the
too small.
text. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Of course. So yeah, we are empathizing with the client because in many cases, the client itself, it has many ideas for features what could be done, but we kind of need to go back to the overall goal, and that's to help our client, not the product owner or CEO of the company. So in this case, the client is the customer who lost their pet, and we assume that the client wants their pet back, of course, and that the pet has already a tracking chip. I think every pet nowadays gets a chip, so this is more like a ID card for the pet that they get injected, kind of. And the client gets info about the pet finder service during an appointment, so they kind of signed up for it before. Then in the first step, we set up the pet finder service before the pet gets lost. Otherwise, there's no chance to find it back, not with our service. And second step is when the pet gets lost, we will show where it is, and then if it's successfully, the pet can be found by the client. So this would be the ideal happy flow. The pet has the setup process, then when it gets lost, we can see it somehow where it is, and in the third step, we find it. But now, how do we get there to this happy path? It's just an idea, and how can we define it so we can start designing? And for this, I would ask the different stakeholders to brainstorm, because everyone has a different perspective on this, and the doctor has a different perspective as the developer and as the designer. So I would ask everyone to brainstorm what will happen if you imagine the product already existed, and we imagine what will happen if you log into your account, and then what will you see, like how will the product look like, and how does it help to reach the goal to find our lost pet. And then everyone has 10 minutes. It sounds really little, but often it's good to have a little time frame, because with this little time pressure, often like the really main points that you want to say coming up to your mind, and you just write them down. And if we had too much time, then again, we would start like brainstorming about crazy features. And maybe for the future, this could be another task to use crazy aids, for example, to create more crazy features. But in this case, we are more in the MVP kind of approach, and we want to kick off the project. So we just want to know what are the main functions that this product needs. So Dr. Erika has the idea that the client sees a map with a pin where the pet currently is if they logged into their account. And also there could be a history where a client can see where the pet was the other day.
Gero, can I ask you a quick question about this?
Sure.
Actually?
Yeah.
I'm really curious, when you're doing this phase with people, are they brainstorming like individually, silently, or is it part of like a conversation that's happening? Can you tell us a little bit more about like what it actually looks like during the brainstorm phase?
Yeah, sure. So during this 10 minutes, I would ask everyone to do their task silently. And afterwards, we have another round of voting. So everyone gets some dots that I prepared for them. They should be limited, and it's not allowed to duplicate them for the participants. So for example, Dr. Erika has 3 dots. After she wrote down her ideas, she can vote for her own ideas or for other ideas. And also she will present her post-its to the group. And often then it starts to lead into a conversation where people ask questions if they don't understand what she actually means, something like that. So first silent, then conversation, and then voting to limit the ideas again, because if we kick off the project and we do everything that's possible, that would be too much. So we need to focus where to start at this point. So yeah, here could be written anything. And then after the voting, often you have like a shared understanding. What are the main features? Of course, we need to validate this later with users, but it's just obvious that there is like something like a map with a pet. How exactly this will be integrated is open at this point, but yeah. So we have like afterwards we have our main ideas that we gather for the next section, which is the aligning part. And in this part, it's important to kind of place the ideas in the matrix. This can be also an open discussion because a developer has a different point of view, how feasible something is compared to a bed. You know, often they think like, oh yeah, this map, that could be easy shown. I mean, Google does it, so why can't we do it? This kind of thing. And then we need the developer to kind of, yeah, bring in their thoughts, how feasible this feature could be. So the main ideas we had here was the ones that first that the pet is shown in the map. Second, that if there's no data from movement of the pet, we get a message with an alert. And also we want a maps integration. So it could be Google Maps where I see the live location of my pet. Yeah, please don't copy this idea. I think it could be a good product. No, I think it exists already, probably. I didn't check. So yeah, how high is the impact for the customer and how high is the effort for us to develop this feature? I mean, the best would be if there's a low effort and high impact, obviously. So that would be the one where I get an alert if there's no movement at all. Then to have like the live location in a map, sending from GPS data from this chip that my pet has, is a high impact, but also kind of high effort. But even higher effort in this case would be that I have, the integration here is rated to be middle in the center, and then the map, to set up the map with the live location, is the highest effort. But also we agreed that it's like the main feature. So in the next round, when we define kind of in which, what's the timeline for this project and when do we want to, where do we want to start first, and then which task could be done next, we define that the main feature is to be done first. From, yeah, maybe from the developer perspective, they will check if it's possible, if the GPS data that we get can be shown in the map. From a design perspective, I would start researching about maps and how can we show like an avatar of the pet, or how would I show where the pet is. And then I just set up here weeks, but it could also be months. I mean, it depends. When you kick off a project, you often don't know really how fast you work together as a team. So it's more like a vague idea how this can be done. And later on, if you work closer with the same team, you can time frame it much better. That's why I also prefer working with the same developers together. So we know each other and we know the way we work. But this is like a loose time frame, just to agree what steps needs to be done first, kind of. And I'm talking about smaller project. Of course, in huge corporates, you have a project manager who would define this much more in detail. But as freelance designer, we have small clients with small businesses, and we do many jobs together. So that's why I use this process. And then in the next part, which is the defining part, I would also give everyone 10 minutes, but this depends also how many people do you have in this meeting. And if you have 5 people, and there might be more discussion, and so you can adjust the time. It's just an idea. Sorry if I didn't zoom in again. So yeah, in this part, I ask everyone to list activities that contribute from their perspective to the success of the project, and also needs they have, risk they see, or dependencies, which is really important. Then during the project, you would have weekly meetups, weekly meetings to see if the progress and dependencies are working out as you planned, but just to kick off and to start somewhere, because we are currently here like before it even started. So this is just the beginning of the project, and what comes here in between, it's a bit, yeah, no one knows at this point, but somewhere you have to start. So what are some activities from my perspective as a designer that I would do with this task that I got? So I would start researching wireframing, then maybe prototyping. These are just, I mean, it's a feature that doesn't exist. So I just filled in the gaps here, but later on you will have much more specific task if you have a actual client. And what are needs and requirements that you have to start with your project? Maybe you need some data, maybe you want to see some research they did before, something like this. And risks, I could not come up with risk in this case, but yeah, for your project could be many risks. So it's just good to talk openly about the process. Is the time over? Is this right?
No, you're okay. Sorry, don't worry.
All right. How much time is left? Actually, I didn't time frame.
You have a couple minutes if you want to keep
going. Yeah, so I think if you have any questions about this process, if something is not clear, this might not work for every project, as I said, but yeah, it's just an example how I work. If you have other examples or some problems that you had before, I would be happy to share some thoughts about this.
Yeah, we have a question. Oh, we have one person who has a question in the raised hand. We'll go to Gero first, and then we also have some questions in the chat as well.
Perfect.
So Vera, if you want to unmute yourself and you can ask it live. You can also put it in the chat if you want to put it in the chat as well. So we have from Stephanie in the chat. She was like, how would you recommend handling a client who has very little meeting available, wants to be minimally involved with a project, and gives limited feedback? So we would call these difficult clients maybe, but yeah, have you experienced this? Do you have any suggestions on how this goes?
Yeah, it sounds difficult. Yeah, I would also suggest a workshop, because in the end, this will take like 1 hour, 1.5 hours, and that's not a lot of time, I think. And it really helps to align, and then you're good to work. And I mean, if someone hires you as an expert, also your time is really valuable. And if you cannot work because there are some dependencies on feedback, for example, then, I mean, it doesn't make sense to go on with the project because you can make guesses. And if you have to do it all over again because you had not the right information that you needed and not the right feedback, that's really frustrating. And I would just openly talk about that problem and then usually agree on a weekly meeting or on a workshop. So, because in the end you want to push the project and that's better for everyone. So that's my suggestion. I hope it will help.
Yeah, I think it's an indicator that maybe they're not the right client for you if they're not willing to kind of give you the information you need or have their input in. And so I think, yeah, I like what you're suggesting there. And I think there's ways to kind of show or explain what the value is and giving them little bits in the beginning and saying, let me show you how valuable this can be as well. So, Vero, who they put the question in the chat for us. So, how can you deal or set in agreement delivery timeframes that not affect figures of the quoted project? So, yeah, I can ask it again. How can you deal or set in the agreement delivery timeframes that are not affected in the figures or quote in the project? Is this something you work with that when you're creating like terms or contracts with your clients about putting timeframes in the contract?
Yeah, usually I would ask my clients to give feedback within 1 week. But again, I prefer, to have a daily communication in Slack or similar, and then have a weekly stand-up where you talk to each other. And I think it helps for the vibe and for the team to share the goal and it's good to have a contract. That's one thing, but then I mean, if someone is late for 1 day, I'm also not angry or something, but you want to, I love the feeling of like, let's push this forward. And that's why I love workshopping, because everyone's like motivated to do this in most of the cases that I know. And if you have a contract, that's one thing. And 1 week for me works, but I think that's really independent, different. And it depends also how many days a week would you work on this. Maybe 1 month would be fine for you. I don't know. So.
Yeah. We also have a couple other questions that are in the realm of kind of like, when does this happen in reference to scoping or into like what happens a little bit before the workshop? So one of those is like, and this is from Jordana, Gero, before the kickoff, how do you structure the scope of the work? So how do you think about it before the actual kickoff call?
Usually I get a briefing before the workshop. And then if there are more people involved, let's say I'm there with a team and also developers are involved, then I cannot schedule the whole project. I'm not a project manager, but for design task, if it gets more specific and we agree what are the features that we need, then I could also, based on experience, I often people ask me this, like, how do you time frame it? But it's a bit about experience, that at some point how long you will take for a task. But I prefer also to not give the idea that I know the exact hours that I would work on something. So we kind of make like a budget for a feature, and then you kind of try to squeeze it in, and you can always do things more detailed. And that depends then also on the budget of the client, how really refined do you want to work on this, or how many user tests can you do? That's really different from each project.
Yeah, I see. There's a couple questions that got upvoted a bunch that I'm going to get to shortly, but there's one that just came in about, and you're kind of talking about the scope and the budget, and has the question is, do you do this workshop before you give an estimate or after? And I guess my follow-up is like, can your estimate change, or can your like terms kind of change after a workshop? Has that ever happened before where you realize from the kickoff workshop, maybe it's much bigger than you were expecting or something?
Yes, but usually, often I design products for MVP approach, and then we also have a parking lot for features that could be done afterwards. And I would plan my budget like the kickoff workshop could be like the first package of budget, and then after this you see if you really want to work together, because it could also happen. I think it happened once that you just find out after this workshop, like the methods that we are using are too different, or we just don't vibe with each other, and that's okay. And then you are not trapped in something for both sides that you don't want. And I think this first workshop is like, it's a piece of work itself. So after this, the client can take this. I can make even a nice presentation from this, and they already have some ideas and some value that we created. So it's like a first milestone. And after that, the real work begins, but it also couldn't. Like, that's an option, of course.
Yeah, I really love that. It's like the testing period. You're kind of like, I don't know, dating for the first couple dates. And you're like, is this going to work? Are we going to do this?
Yes, like after chatting for a week, you may have a blind date, and that doesn't mean anything. So you don't need to marry.
Nice. So we have from Julia, they say, thank you. The question is, what is something that could go wrong in this process? The process seems pretty straightforward, but I bet there could be some roadblocks. What are they?
I mean, it could happen that for some people, workshopping itself, they think like, yeah, but I know already what I want, so why are we doing this? And yeah, it just happened once to me. And then it's like, yeah, if someone is just base everything on their own ideas, for me, it's hard to work with that. So, but usually not much can go wrong, I think. No, maybe you know something in your experience.
I mean, yeah, I think a lot of it has to do, I would imagine, with trying it out and just getting comfortable with like the flow and the exercises, I would imagine. And I think, yeah, just getting people to talk maybe. And that's just like in general. Like, but I think what's really great that you have in here is some individual time where they can get their ideas out and communicate them first before kind of formulating their ideas. And so I think that's really nice, the combination you have with like kind of individual working time and then maybe conversations of what's happening afterwards too.
Yeah, and it's true. I was reading, people are not always cooperating, and yeah, you don't have, sometimes you have people in the team who are not putting too much into the project. But if it's just 1.5 hours, then most of them will do, from my experience. If you have someone who's really like, I don't want to do this, okay, then just work with the rest. And
yeah. We have a question from Jinko, which she's like, in the case that you and the client, it's just you and the client maybe, and no other cross-functional team members, do you alter this workshop? Is it still relevant? Like, how could you maybe alter this workshop depending on like who's actually in the kickoff meeting?
Interesting question. Yeah, I think that probably also depends then, why are you doing this workshop? So this might not be the right workshop for another use case. So then you would need to adjust the activities. This activities is not things that I came up with. They're just like from other templates. I merged them together for my needs, in this case, for a new feature. But everything it's flexible here, and you could adjust it.
Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit like about how you have adjusted it in for other clients? Like, have you kind of worked in different activities for different types of projects?
Yeah, like basically every time. So I just
Okay.
I just came up with this because I needed something to. There's not a general flow for this. It's like design work, but that's what I love, right? Like every time it's completely different. I don't have like this templates that I use and then my work is done. I wish I had that, then I would be much faster. But everything we do is really custom made. So yeah, if they would have a specific question, maybe it's easier to answer then.
Yeah, okay. So we also have as a freelancer, what is the biggest challenge you have to deal with? How does this contract or let's just do the first part of this question. Like, what is one of the biggest struggles that you have as a freelancer?
For me, it feels really natural to be a freelancer, and I'm really happy with the decision. I mean, one thing that it's important is that you're able to motivate yourself to stand up every day to do this work and to stay motivated. But for me, yeah, I'm really happy to do that. And I think like all the skills that I was missing as a only designer within a team, and that's kind of scary when you start. You're like, oh my God, how how do I organize my time, my money, and all these things, and all these skills I kind of learned through coachings. So that really helped me to grow as a freelancer, and I just pick some raisins here and there what I need, and hopefully that is an ongoing process, so that won't stop.
Yeah. I remember talking to you previously about kind of the way that you were reaching out for support in the beginning and doing some of this coaching that really kind of helped you build in the processes. And I remember also when I first started freelancing, like the idea of not having my own system set up were really difficult. Like, even though you don't do the same workshop every time with a kickoff, like there's some sort of structure that you maybe have. You're like, I know this activity works well here, this kind of activity. And so you can kind of pick and choose. But when you're doing it for the first time, you're pulling everything out of thin air. Like, how do I know what scope do I need? How do I know how to put an invoice together? Or how do I know this is an intake form that maybe is just like a formatted, like now, and I would do it in Notion now, but like this is something I can copy and paste and give to clients over and over again. And it was really kind of a learning process when that was done previously by somebody else, and now it's like fully your responsibility too.
Yeah, exactly. But the system will grow by time.
Yeah.
So then it gets easier and easier for you to have more time to actually design. In the beginning, you will spend more time like setting up the system. Also, I think like finding new clients also takes some time. So you just need to be aware that there are many more tasks that you need to do than just designing. But that's something that I really enjoy. But you should keep this in mind, yeah.
Yeah. There's a couple questions in here around figuring out how much like to charge or scoping, but I'm wondering, was there any sort of like, where were the places that you went to try to figure out what were the right like prices that you should charge for certain kind of services, or what kind of resources were out there, or people that did you talk to kind of figure this stuff out when you were first starting off?
I think it's also important to know what's the amount of money that I need in the end of the month. It's not only about, for me, it changed really that I don't count every hour that I work, and not every hour is paid. For example, like networking, talking to potential clients, no one will pay you this, but it's part of the work. And but what's the amount of money, and according to that, to like hourly rates in a month that you need to earn money. And yeah, I think you can start with a lower budget. My first goal was to, in my first year, to earn that amount that I earned before in the agency by freelancing. That was my goal, and I reached it pretty fast because I realized, okay, that's not too hard. And that, so for me, it was more like a happy moment that I reached my goal, not setting it too high. And then, yeah, you learn it by doing, I guess. And then also talking to other designers.
Yeah, I love this. We have a talk from over a year ago, I think, by Dee Serrano, who she kind of breaks down how she came up with her, or not like, yeah, around how kind of calculated her charge per or like daily rate and stuff like that. And she had a really similar suggestion of like, well, what do you want to make at the end of the month?
Yeah.
Like start there. Like, what do you need to pay? Like, what are your bills? What is like the bottom line of like what you need to, like pay? And then there was also like, how many hours do you want to work a week or a month? And kind of start calculating that, which feels like a weird way to calculate like the amount that you're going to do. But I think you made a really also good point, is there's so many hours that are like part of freelancing work that are not quote unquote billable hours.
Yes.
Like finances and networking and all the logistical like back end stuff that doesn't like that you don't charge clients like for hours, but that is why like those hourly rates are higher than maybe what you would get in an in-house position too. You're also paying for your own health insurance and all these other things.
But also, when you ask the client what's cheaper to have a freelancer or an agency, in the end, it's the freelancer. So
yeah,
the agency would also have this extra time in the budget, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think everyone calculates that, and it's just part of the job.
Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing with us today, like your experiences and this workshop. There was about a couple questions about sharing it. So I think you mentioned at the beginning you're okay with sharing the template with some people. If you want to pass that along to us, we'll send it out in our email tomorrow morning. And so that's how we can get that's how you guys can get access to this mirror board to take a look at it later. You could also just reach out. Well, how can people get in touch with you if they're maybe looking for a freelancer or want to talk a little bit more about this? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
I think LinkedIn is a good place to connect and stay tuned about my availabilities, and also I'm happy to share here now some links. And as I said, I'm now part of Connector, so if you need support from design or development and you have a purposeful company, we're happy to help. And maybe you can also share my profile in the mentioned email.
Yeah, we got your LinkedIn on. Jeff just mentioned your LinkedIn link in the chat, and we'll find that other Connector link in there as well. So yeah, thanks again. It was really such a pleasure having you here.
Same here.
Yeah.